Why was a 12-year-old girl standing in the middle of a Navy SEAL training compound? That's what everyone wanted to know. The instructors exchanged glances, the recruits whispered, and Colonel Hayes, 6'4", chest full of medals, face carved from granite, looked down at her like she was a stray dog that had wandered onto sacred ground. She was small, thin, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look even younger. She wore donated fatigues that hung loose on her frame, boots 2 sizes too big, and she stood there, silent, staring straight ahead while 200 eyes burned into her back. "Seriously, kid," Hayes said, his voice dripping with disbelief. "You think this is summer camp?" A few snickers rippled through the crowd. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stood there with her chin up, shoulders square, like she belonged, like she'd earned the right to be there, but she hadn't, not yet, and everyone knew it. Her name was Elena Reyes, 12 years old, daughter of Captain Maria Reyes, one of the finest snipers the Navy had ever produced. Maria had taken down high-value targets in 4 different war zones. She trained alongside the best, earned respect in a world that didn't hand it out freely. And then 3 months ago she died, ambushed in Kandahar, killed protecting her spotter. Elena had watched the funeral from the second row, watched them fold the flag. Watched her father, a man who never cried, break down in the front seat of their car afterward. And she'd made a decision, a promise. She would finish what her mother started. She would become what her mother was, no matter what it took. But standing here now, surrounded by men who'd spent years earning their place, she felt something she hadn't expected. Doubt, not in her mother, not in the goal, but in herself. Because the truth was, she didn't know if she could do this. She didn't know if she was strong enough, fast enough, good enough. And the way Colonel Hayes was looking at her like she was wasting his time made that doubt grow louder. "You know what your mother would say if she saw you here?" Hayes asked, stepping closer. His voice was quieter now, almost gentle, but there was an edge to it, a test. Elena met his eyes. "She'd tell me to stop standing around and get to work." For the first time, Hayes smiled, just a flicker, gone as fast as it came. "Then let's see what you've got, kid." The shooting range was a quarter-mile from the main compound, a stretch of desert dirt, target boards at varying distances, and an observation tower where instructors watched through scopes. Elena had been here before, years ago when her mother was still alive. She remembered the sound of the rifle, the smell of gunpowder, the way her mother's breathing would slow, deepen, become something almost meditative before each shot. "You ever fire a weapon before?" one of the instructors asked. His name was Sergeant Davila, 42, former Marine Scout sniper. He had kind eyes, but his voice was all business. "Yes, sir," Elena said. "What kind?" "M40, my mother's." Davila raised an eyebrow. "You're telling me you fired a Marine sniper rifle?" "Yes, sir." "When?" "Last summer, at the range near our house. My mother taught me." Davila looked at Hayes. Hayes shrugged. "Let her shoot." They set her up at the 100-yard line. Gave her an M4 carbine, lighter, easier to handle. A weapon most recruits started with. She took it without comment, checked the magazine, checked the chamber, then moved into position. Prone, elbows down, cheek to the stock, the instructors watched, the recruits watched, and Elena took a breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth, slow, steady, just like her mother taught her. The world narrowed, the noise faded. All that existed was the target, the rifle. The breath. She squeezed the trigger, the shot cracked through the air, and the target didn't just get hit, it got destroyed, center mass, perfect grouping. Davila walked down range with binoculars, stared at the target for a long moment, then turned back to Hayes. "Colonel," he said slowly, "you need to see this." By the end of the first day, Elena had fired 300 rounds, 100-yard targets, 200, 300, every single one dead center. The recruits stopped whispering, the instructors stopped smirking, and Colonel Hayes stopped underestimating her. But here's the thing about being good at something. It makes people curious, and curiosity in a place like this can be dangerous, because now they wanted to know more. They wanted to know how a 12-year-old girl could shoot like a seasoned operator. They wanted to know what her mother had taught her, what she'd seen, what she'd lived through. And Elena wasn't ready to talk about that, not yet. Because the truth was more complicated than they knew. Her mother hadn't just taught her how to shoot. She taught her how to survive, how to stay calm when everything around you is falling apart, how to make the hard call when no one else will, and most importantly, how to live with the weight of it afterward. That night in the barracks, Alina lay awake on a narrow cot while the other recruits slept. She stared at the ceiling, thought about her mother, thought about the last conversation they'd had before the deployment. "You're too young to understand this now," her mother had said, sitting on the edge of Alina's bed. "But one day you will. Strength isn't about how much you can carry. It's about knowing when to put it down." Alina hadn't understood then, but she was starting to now. Because carrying her mother's legacy, carrying the weight of those expectations, was harder than any rifle, heavier than any mission. And the question she couldn't answer, the one that kept her awake, was simple. What if she wasn't strong enough to carry it? What if she failed? What if everyone was right to doubt her? But then she remembered something else her mother used to say, something quieter, something she only said when they were alone. "You don't prove yourself to them, Mija. You prove it to you." And so Alina closed her eyes, made a decision. Tomorrow she would prove it, not to Colonel Hayes, not to the instructors, not to the recruits who still looked at her like she didn't belong, but to herself. Morning came fast, too fast. The wake-up call blared through the barracks at 500 and Alina was already dressed, already moving. While the others stumbled out of bed, she was lacing her boots. While they groaned and stretched, she was out the door. Davila was waiting by the range. He had 2 rifles laid out on a table, one M4, one M40, the same rifle her mother had used. "You said you fired one of these before," Davila said, nodding toward the M40. "Yes, sir." "Then today we find out if you were telling the truth." He handed her the rifle. It was heavier than she remembered, longer. The weight settled into her hands like an old memory. She could almost hear her mother's voice. "Feel the balance, respect the weight. It's not just a tool, it's a promise." Davila walked her to the 500-yard line, set up a target barely visible in the distance. "This isn't about hitting it," he said. "It's about consistency. 5 shots, tight grouping. Show me you can do it more than once." Alina nodded, got into position, and for a moment she hesitated, because 500 yards wasn't just a distance, it was a test, a threshold. Her mother had made shots at twice that range, under fire, in the dark, with lives on the line, and here she was, a kid with oversized boots and a borrowed rifle, trying to prove she could do a fraction of that. Pushed the doubt down, focused on the breath. In, out, in, out. The first shot rang out, hit just left of center. She adjusted. Second shot, closer. Third shot, dead center. Fourth shot, same spot. Fifth shot, same. Davila didn't say anything, just walked down range with the binocular, stared at the target for what felt like an hour, then came back. "You're not just good," he said quietly. "You're scary good." Alina didn't smile, didn't celebrate, because she knew this was just the beginning. The real test wasn't hitting stationary targets on a sunny morning. The real test was everything that came next. Over the next 2 weeks, Alina trained harder than anyone on the compound. She ran the obstacle course until her legs gave out, did push-ups until her arms shook, studied ballistics charts until her eyes burned. And every single day she shot. 100 yards, 300, 500, 700, and then, one morning, Colonel Hayes called her into his office. She stood at attention while he sat behind his desk, hands folded, expression unreadable. "You know why you're here?" he asked. "No, sir." "Because you're making my instructors look bad." Alina blinked, didn't know how to respond to that. Hayes leaned back in his chair. "You've been here 2 weeks. In that time you've outshot half my recruits, men who have been training for months, men who have been in the military longer than you've been alive." He paused, studied her. "So I have a question for you, Alina. Why are you really here?" And there it was, the question she'd been avoiding, the one she didn't want to answer. Because the truth was messy, painful, complicated. "I want to honor my mother," she said finally. Hayes nodded. "That's a good answer, but it's not the real one." Alina felt something twist in her chest. "Then what is?" "You're here because you're angry," Hayes said. "Angry that she's gone, angry that the world kept spinning without her, angry that no one asked if you were okay." He leaned forward. "And you think if you can do what she did, if you can be as good as she was, then maybe it'll hurt less. Maybe it'll make sense. Maybe it'll bring her back." Alina's throat tightened. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry, couldn't cry, not here, not now. "With respect, sir," she said, voice shaking, "you don't know anything about me. "You're right," Hayes said. "I don't, but I knew your mother, and I know what it's like to lose someone and think the only way to honor them is to become them." He stood, walked around the desk, knelt down so he was eye level with her. "But here's the truth, kid. Your mother didn't want you to be her. She wanted you to be you. And the sooner you figure that out, the better off you'll be." Alina left the office with her head down, her chest tight, her mind racing, because Hayes was right about all of it. She was angry, she was hurt, and she thought if she could just be good enough, strong enough, fast enough, then maybe the pain would go away, but it wasn't going away. It was just hiding, buried under every shot, every drill, every moment she pushed herself past the breaking point. And the question she couldn't answer was this: if she stopped trying to be her mother, who was she? What did she have left? That night she sat alone on the edge of the compound, looking out at the desert. The sky was clear, stars everywhere. And for the first time since her mother died, she let herself cry, not because she was weak, not because she was giving up, but because she was tired, tired of carrying the weight, tired of pretending she was okay, tired of being strong when all she wanted was to be a kid again. And somewhere in the back of her mind she heard her mother's voice, not the instructor voice. Not the soldier voice, but the mom voice, the one that used to tuck her in at night, the one that used to say, "It's okay to be scared, Mija. It's okay to not have all the answers, just don't stop trying." And so she didn't. She wiped her eyes, stood up, and walked back to the barracks, because tomorrow the real test began. The announcement came at breakfast. Colonel Hayes stood at the front of the mess hall, arms crossed, expression grim. "In 2 days," he said, "we're running a live-fire exercise. Long-range precision, moving targets, limited time. The top 3 shooters will advance to the next phase of training." He paused. "Let that sink in. Everyone else goes home." The room went silent. Alina felt every eye in the place turned toward her, because she knew what they were thinking. She'd outshot most of them on the range. But this was different. This was pressure. This was real, and she was still just a kid. "Raise," Hayes said, looking directly at her. "You're in." She nodded, tried to keep her face neutral, but inside her heart was hammering, because this wasn't just about proving herself anymore. This was about survival, about earning the right to stay, and if she failed, it was over. The next 2 days were a blur. Alina trained from dawn to dusk, ran scenarios in her head, practiced breathing drills, studied wind patterns, and every night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was ready. The morning of the exercise, she woke before the alarm, got dressed in the dark, and walked to the range alone. The sun was just starting to rise. The desert was quiet, and for a moment she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks: peace. Not because she wasn't nervous. She was terrified, but because she realized something important. This wasn't about her mother anymore. This wasn't about Hayes or the instructors or the recruits who doubted her. This was about her, about what she could do, about who she wanted to become, and that was something worth fighting for. Exercise began at 800, 12 shooters, 6 targets at varying distances, 600 to 1200 yards, moving targets, wind, time, pressure. The kind of scenario that separated the good from the great. Alina drew the 6th position. Watched the first 5 shooters take their turns. 3 hit their targets, 2 missed. And then it was her turn. She stepped up to the line, took the rifle from Davila, felt its weight, its balance, and got into position. The first target appeared. 800 yards, moving left to right at a slow pace. She tracked it, controlled her breathing, squeezed the trigger, hit. The second target, 1,000 yards, moving right to left, faster. She adjusted for wind, adjusted for speed, fired, hit. The third target, 1,200 yards, stationary but smaller. The size of a dinner plate. She steadied herself, blocked out the noise, the pressure, the doubt, and fired, hit. By the time she finished, the range was silent. Davila checked the targets, came back with a look on his face that said everything. 6 for 6, he said quietly. Perfect score. The other shooters stared, Hayes stared, and Alina just stood there, not celebrating, not smiling, because she knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. That night, Hayes called her back to his office. "You know what you did out there today?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "You didn't just hit the targets. Broke the compound record. The previous record was held by a Navy SEAL with 15 years of experience. And you, a 12-year-old kid, just beat him." Alina didn't know what to say. Hayes stood, walked over to a shelf, pulled down a small wooden box, opened it. Inside was a single coin, a challenge coin, her mother's. "She left this for you," Hayes said. "Told me to give it to you when you were ready." He handed it to her. "I think you're ready." Alina took the coin, felt its weight in her palm, saw her mother's name engraved on the back. And for the first time since she'd arrived, she felt something other than doubt. She felt proud. But pride is a fragile thing, and the world has a way of testing it, because the next morning everything changed. A call came in from JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. They'd been tracking Alina's progress, watching her scores, and they wanted to know more. Not because they thought she was ready for combat, but because they wanted to understand how a 12-year-old could shoot like a Tier 1 operator. Hayes brought her into a briefing room, sat her down across from two men in suits, CIA. NSA, she wasn't sure, didn't matter. "Miss Reyes," one of them said, "we'd like to ask you some questions about your training, about your mother, about what she taught you." Alina looked at Hayes. He gave her a small nod, permission. "She taught me to shoot," Alina said. "That's all." "That's all," the man repeated. "You expect us to believe that?" "I don't expect you to believe anything," Alina said. "I'm just telling you the truth." The man leaned forward. "Your mother was involved in classified operations, high-value targets, sensitive intel. We need to know what she told you, what she shared." And there it was, the real reason they were here. They didn't care about her. They cared about what she knew, what her mother might have told her. Alina felt something cold settle in her chest, because she realized something in that moment. Her mother hadn't just taught her to shoot. She taught her to protect what mattered, to know when to speak and when to stay silent. "My mother taught me how to shoot," Alina said again, voice steady. "She taught me how to breathe, how to focus, how to make the shot when it counts." She paused, looked the man in the eye. "But she never talked about her work, ever, and if she had, I wouldn't tell you anyway." The room went quiet. The man's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Hayes stood. "Gentlemen," he said, voice cold, "Miss Reyes has answered your questions. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with me." The men left. But Alina knew this wasn't over, because the world doesn't let you walk away that easily. Not when you're good at something, not when you know things, not when you're the daughter of a legend. That night Alina packed her things, not because she was leaving, but because she needed to be ready. Ready for whatever came next, because she'd learned something important out here, something her mother had tried to teach her all along. Strength isn't about how hard you hit, it's about how much you can take and keep moving forward. And dignity doesn't need to prove itself. It simply exists, in the quiet moments, in the hard choices. In the times when no one's watching and you do the right thing anyway. Alina lay down on her cot, held her mother's challenge coin in her hand, and whispered a promise into the dark. "I'll make you proud, Mom, not by being you, but by being the best version of me." And for the first time in months, she slept without nightmares. 3 months passed. Alina stayed at the compound. Not as a recruit anymore, she was too young for that legally, but as something else. An anomaly, a protege, a reminder that talent doesn't wait for age or permission. Hayes kept her training, Davila pushed her harder, and slowly the compound adjusted to her presence. The recruits stopped seeing her as a kid. They saw her as a shooter, a damn good one, but respect is a double-edged sword, because the more she proved herself, the more people wanted from her. The more they expected, the more they pushed, and Alina was starting to feel the weight of it again, not the weight of her mother's legacy, but the weight of her own. One morning, Davila pulled her aside. "There's a competition coming up," he said. "Annual sniper challenge, military and law enforcement from across the country, long-range precision, timed drills, stress tests." He paused. "Hayes wants to enter you." Alina blinked. "Why?" "Because you're ready, and because he thinks it's time people see what you can do." "What if I'm not ready?" Davila smiled. "Then you'll find out, but my money's on you, kid." The competition was in 3 weeks. Held at a range in North Carolina. 60 shooters, the best of the best. Navy SEALs, Marine Scout snipers, FBI HRT Delta Force, and Alina Reyes, 12 years old, 4'9", 90 pounds soaking wet. She knew what people would think when they saw her. She knew the looks she'd get, the whispers, the doubt. But she also knew something they didn't. She'd been doubted before, and she was still here. The training intensified. long-range shots in high wind, nighttime scenarios with thermal scopes, stress drills where instructors yelled in her ear while she tried to line up a shot. And through it all, Alina focused on one thing: control. Not of the rifle, not of the environment, but of herself, her breath, her thoughts, her fear, because she'd learned something important these past few months. Fear doesn't go away, it just gets quieter. You learn to hear it, acknowledge it, and then do the thing anyway. And that was the real skill. The one her mother had spent years mastering. The one Alina was just beginning to understand. The night before they left for North Carolina, Alina sat alone on the range. The stars were out, the air was cool, and she thought about everything that had brought her here: her mother's death, the funeral, the decision to come to this place, the doubt, the anger, the pain, and the slow, painful process of becoming someone new, someone who wasn't just Maria Reyes' daughter, but Alina, just Alina, and that was enough. "You ready for this?" a voice asked. She turned. Hayes was standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets. "I don't know," Alina admitted. "Good," Hayes said. "That means you're smart." He sat down next to her, quiet for a moment. "You know what your mother told me once?" he asked. "She said the best shooters aren't the ones who never miss. They're the ones who miss and still take the next shot." Alina looked at him. "Did she miss a lot?" Hayes smiled. "More than you'd think, but you'd never know it because she never let it stop her." He stood. Offered her a hand. "Come on, kid, big day tomorrow." They flew out at dawn. Military transport, Davila, Hayes, and Alina. The flight was long, quiet. Alina stared out the window, watched the landscape change below, desert to mountains to forests, and thought about what was waiting for her: 60 of the best shooters in the country and her. When they landed, the competition was already buzzing with activity. Tents, equipment, shooters checking their rifles, talking strategy, and then they saw her, a 12-year-old girl in oversized fatigues. Walking next to a colonel, carrying a rifle case, the whispers started immediately. "Is that a kid? What's she doing here? This some kind of joke?" Alina kept her head up. Didn't react, because she'd learned something important. Other people's doubt is just noise. It only becomes real if you let it in. The registration desk was set up near the main tent. Alina walked up, handed over her paperwork. The woman behind the desk looked at the forms, then at Alina, then at Hayes. "Is this correct?" the woman asked. "Yes, ma'am," Hayes said. "She's competing. But she's old enough to shoot," Hayes said, "and good enough to be here, so if there's a problem, I suggest you take it up with command." The woman stamped the paperwork, handed Alina a competitor badge. "Lane 17, she said. "First event starts in 30 minutes. Alina clipped the badge to her jacket, walked toward her assigned lane, and felt the eyes of every shooter on the range follow her. This was it. The moment she'd been training for. The moment everything came down to, and she had one thought. One single, clear thought: don't let them see you scared. The first event was a cold bore shot. Single round, 1,000-yard target. No warm-up, no practice, just walk up to the line, take the shot, and prove you belong. Alina watched the first 10 shooters. Some hit, some missed. All of them were tense, because 1,000 yards is a long way, a lot of variables: wind, temperature, elevation, and nerves. "Lane 17, the range officer called. Alina stepped up, took her rifle from the case, an M40 borrowed from the compound. She'd spent the last 3 months with this weapon, knew its quirks, its tendencies. The way it pulled slightly right in crosswind. She got into position, prone, elbows down, cheek to stock, and for a moment the world went quiet. No voices, no wind, no pressure, just her, the rifle, and the target. She took a breath, held it, squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked across the range. And a second later, the range officer's voice came through the radio. Hit, center mass. The shooters around her went quiet, because they just watched a 12-year-old girl make a shot half of them had missed. And suddenly, this wasn't a joke anymore. The second event was timed precision. 5 targets at varying distances, 400 to 800 yards, 2 minutes to acquire, engage, and move to the next. Speed and accuracy. The kind of drill that separated the competent from the exceptional. Alina drew the 20th slot, watched the others go. Some made all 5, some made 3. One guy, Navy SEAL, built like a tank, made 4 and ran out of time on the 5th. And then it was her turn. "Lane 17, you're up." Alina stepped to the line. The timer started. First target, 400 yards. She found it, fired, hit. Second target, 500 yards, slight wind from the left. She adjusted, fired, hit. Third target, 600 yards, partially obscured. She calculated the angle, fired, hit. Fourth target, 700 yards, wind picking up. She slowed her breathing, waited for the gust to pass, fired, hit. Fifth target, 800 yards, 30 seconds left. She found the target, lined up the shot, and hesitated because the wind was swirling, unpredictable, and if she rushed, she'd miss. 20 seconds, she waited. 15 seconds, the wind settled. 10 seconds, she fired, hit. The timer buzzed, and the range officer's voice came through. Lane 17, 5 for 5. Time, 1 minute 58 seconds. The crowd erupted, not in cheers, in shock, because she just posted the fastest perfect score of the day. But here's the thing about success. It makes people pay attention, and attention isn't always a good thing. During the lunch break, Alina sat alone under a tent, eating an MRE, trying to stay focused. "Mind if I sit?" a voice asked. She looked up. A man in his 40s, tan, weathered, patches on his jacket, Marine Scout sniper, instructor, Purple Heart. "It's a free tent," Alina said. He sat, pulled out his own MRE, ate in silence for a minute, then spoke. "I knew your mother," he said. Alina froze. "Deployed with her in 2019, Afghanistan. She saved my life." He paused, took out a spotter who had me zeroed. "I didn't even know he was there, but she did." Alina didn't know what to say. "She was the best I ever worked with," the man continued. "Not because she had the most kills or the longest shots, but because she never panicked, never rushed, never let the pressure get to her." He looked at Alina. "You've got that same thing, that same calm." "I'm not calm," Alina said quietly. "I'm terrified." The man smiled. "Yeah, but you don't let it control you, that's the difference." He stood, extended a hand. "Lance Corporal Mike Torres, if you ever need anything, kid, you let me know." Alina shook his hand, watched him walk away, and felt something shift inside her because she realized something. She wasn't alone in this. Her mother had left more than just a legacy. She'd left people, people who remembered, people who cared, people who wanted to help. The final event was the one everyone had been waiting for. The long-range challenge, single shot, 1,500 yards, smallest target of the competition. The kind of shot that required not just skill but something else, something harder to define: confidence, trust, the willingness to take the shot even when the math says it's impossible. Alina was one of the last to shoot. By the time her turn came, only 3 shooters had hit the target, and the pressure was suffocating. Because everyone was watching now, wondering if the kid who dominated the first 2 events could handle this. "Lane 17, the range officer called. Alina walked to the line, took her position, and looked down range. 1,500 yards, almost a mile. She could barely see the target, just a speck in the distance. The wind was gusting, the temperature was dropping, and her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and thought about her mother. Not the sniper, not the soldier, but the mom. The one who used to sit with her on the porch and point out constellations. The one who used to say, "You can do hard things, Mija. You just have to believe you can." Alina opened her eyes, lined up the shot, adjusted for wind, adjusted for distance, adjusted for the slight tremor in her hands, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, and for 3 seconds, the longest 3 seconds of her life, she waited. And then the range officer's voice crackled through the radio. "Hit, confirmed." The crowd exploded. Shooters stood, clapped, whistled, and Alina just lay there, eyes closed, breath shaking, because she'd done it, not for her mother, not for Hayes, not for anyone else, but for herself, and that was everything. The awards ceremony was held that evening, under a massive tent. Folding chairs, a small stage, and 60 shooters waiting to see who'd won. Alina sat in the back, Davila on one side, Hayes on the other. She didn't expect a place, not really. She'd done well, sure, but these were professionals, operators with decades of experience, and she was a kid. "Third place," the announcer said, "Marine Gunnery Sergeant William Cross." Applause. Cross walked to the stage, accepted a plaque. "Second place, Navy SEAL Chief Petty Officer Marcus Reed." More applause. Reed, massive, intimidating, decorated, walked to the stage with a grin, and then the announcer paused, looked at his notes, frowned. "First place," he said slowly, "goes to Alina Reyes, Lane 17. The tent went silent. Alina didn't move, couldn't move because she didn't believe it. Davila nudged her. "Go on, kid, that's you." She stood, walked down the aisle, every eye in the tent on her, and stepped onto the stage. The announcer handed her a trophy, bigger than she expected, heavier. "Miss Reyes," he said, "you didn't just win today, you broke the competition record, highest combined score in the history of this event." He paused, looked out at the crowd. "And you did it at 12 years old." The tent erupted, this time not in shock, in respect, because they'd seen her shoot, seen her handle the pressure, seen her earn it, and that was something you couldn't fake. After the ceremony, Alina stood outside the tent, holding the trophy, staring at it like it wasn't real. "Your mother would have been proud," a voice said. She turned. Hayes was standing there, hands in his pockets, expression softer than usual. "Do you think so?" Alina asked. "I know so," Hayes said, "but more importantly, are you proud?" Alina thought about that, thought about the last 6 months. The pain, the doubt, the fear, the anger. And the slow, painful journey of becoming someone she didn't even know she could be. "Yeah," she said quietly, "I am." Hayes nodded. "Good, because this is just the beginning, kid. You've got a long road ahead of you, and it's not going to get easier." "I know," Alina said, "but that's okay, I'm ready." And she meant it, because she'd learned something important out here, something her mother had tried to teach her all along. You don't become great by being fearless. You become great by being afraid. And doing it anyway. That night, Alina called her father from a payphone outside the range. He answered on the second ring. "Mija," he said, voice thick, "how'd it go?" "I won, Dad." Silence. And then quietly he said, "Tell me everything." So she did, told him about the cold bore shot, the timed drill, the 1,500-yard challenge. And when she finished, her father was crying, not sad tears, proud ones. "Your mother used to say you were special," he said. "I didn't understand what she meant, but I do now. I miss her, Dad." "I know, baby, I miss her too, but she's not really gone. She's right there with you, every shot, every breath, every moment you choose to be brave." Alina wiped her eyes. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, Mija. Now go celebrate, you earned it." The flight home was quiet. Alina stared out the window, watched the sun rise over the mountains, and thought about what came next, because this wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning. She was 12 years old, she just won a national sniper competition. Broken records, earned respect, but more importantly, she'd found herself. Not the version of herself that was trying to be her mother, but the version that was just Alina. And that was enough. When they landed, the compound was waiting. Recruits lined up, instructors standing at attention. And as Alina walked off the plane holding her trophy, they saluted. Not because she was Maria Reyes' daughter, but because she was Alina Reyes, and she'd earned it. 6 months later, Alina stood on the same range where it all started, but everything was different now. She was taller, stronger, more confident. The recruits didn't whisper anymore, they asked for advice. The instructors didn't doubt her, they challenged her, and Colonel Hayes, he didn't call her kid anymore, he called her by her name. "Reyes," he said one morning, "I need to talk to you." They walked to his office, sat down, and Hayes handed her a folder. "What's this?" Alina asked. "An invitation," Hayes said. "From JSOC. They want to create a junior training program for young shooters with exceptional talent, and they want you to be the first." Alina opened the folder, read the letter, and felt something twist in her chest, because this was it. The thing she'd been working toward, the validation, the opportunity, but also the responsibility. "What do you think I should do?" she asked. Hayes leaned back. "I think you should do what your mother would have done, trust your gut." Alina thought about that, thought about everything she'd learned, everything she'd been through, and she realized something. Her mother had never chased opportunities. She'd created them, she'd never waited for permission, she'd earned it, and that was the real lesson. "I'll do it," Alina said, "but on one condition." "What's that?" Hayes asked. "I don't want to be the first. I want to help build it for other kids like me. Kids who have lost someone, kids who need a place to prove themselves. I want to help them the way you helped me." Hayes smiled, the kind of smile that said everything. "Deal." Over the next year, Alina worked with JSOC to design the program. A training pipeline for young shooters. Not to create soldiers, but to teach discipline, focus, resilience. And by the time she turned 14, the program was live. 10 kids in the first class, all of them with stories like hers, all of them looking for a way forward. And Alina, she trained alongside them, taught them what she'd learned, shared her mother's lessons, and watched as they grew, because she realized something important. Her mother's legacy wasn't just about being the best. It was about lifting others up, about passing on the knowledge, about making sure the next generation didn't have to figure it out alone. One afternoon, after a long training session, one of the kids, a 13-year-old boy named Marcus, walked up to her. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "How do you do it?" Marcus asked. "How do you make the shot when you're scared?" Alina thought about that, thought about the colonel's words, her mother's voice, the countless hours on the range. "You don't stop being scared," she said. "You just learn to make the shot anyway, because fear is just information. It tells you what matters. And once you know that, you can move forward." Marcus nodded, walked away, and Alina stood there, watching the sun set over the compound, thinking about how far she'd come, thinking about her mother, and smiling because she knew now. This was what her mother had wanted, not for Alina to be her, but for Alina to be better, to take the lessons, build on them, and create something new, something that would outlast both of them. Years later, when journalists asked Alina about that day, the day she broke the SEAL sniper record at 12 years old, she always said the same thing. "It wasn't about the record. It was about proving to myself that I could do hard things, that I could honor my mother without losing myself. And that strength, real strength, isn't about how much weight you can carry. It's about knowing when to share the load." And when they asked what advice she'd give to young people facing impossible odds, she smiled. "Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for people to believe in you. Just take the shot. And even if you miss, take the next one, because dignity doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause. It simply acts. And in the end, that's the only thing that matters." Alina Reyes never became a Navy SEAL. She was too young. And by the time she was old enough, she'd realized something. She didn't need to, because she'd already done what her mother wanted. She'd found her own path, her own purpose, her own way to honor the woman who taught her everything. And that was the real victory, not the trophy, not the record, but the quiet, steady knowledge that she'd done something meaningful, something that would last, something that proved a simple truth. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in the shot you make. It's in the person you become while learning to take it.